Twitter has been criticized for complying with over 80% of government takedown requests under Elon Musk's leadership, according to multiple media reports. This comes after Musk called himself a free speech absolutist. Emily, you are our expert when it comes to global news. You have your thumb on the pulse of a lot that's going on worldwide. Tell us what's going on here and why this is such a hot topic.
Sure. So this is a really important topic, and quickly, why we're talking about it on the show, there's been a lot of talk about the need for decentralized, censorship-resistant social networks. So this clearly fits into that theme, but we'll get to that later. So basically, yes, as you said, Elon Musk and Twitter have been widely criticized for complying with government censorship requests internationally, and there was recently a lot of controversy right before the Turkish elections when Twitter restricted access to some tweets. Now, it's worth noting here that this has always been the case. This is what happens when you have companies like Twitter operating overseas. This has been true for, Google and Facebook. You have governments going to them with requests to take down content or to restrict content. Now, Musk has replied saying that he basically had no choice but to comply with these requests. Now, okay, there's a lot to sort of tease out here, but I think the real problem here and why it's so controversial is that Musk has also positioned himself as a quote unquote free speech absolutist, particularly within the United States context, and has really positioned himself as his takeover of Twitter is to kind of create true, complete free speech and be totally anti-censorship. So yes, it does raises a lot of questions about, the choice to comply with these government requests abroad. And, again, Musk is saying that he had no other choice and that he didn't comply with these censorship requests, then Twitter might be taken down. But if you look sort of at the history of Twitter, you see that Twitter actually does have a choice and has defied government requests in the past.
What pops into my head is if a platform can be so compliant in this way to take down content at the request of governments, what else might they do at the request of governments? Might they give up data? Might something else happen? Is that a worry that you've seen people express in the discourse here?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. And this is such a long story. Before I was kind of in the crypto world, I was looking very specifically at this, looking at some US tech companies and kind of their operations in markets like China, for example. And companies, like Google and Microsoft and Yahoo, they got into all sorts of trouble in the Chinese market for exactly this reason. Because what can happen is when you are operating in an overseas market, you have to sort of comply with those local laws and regulations, which means that a foreign government can come to you and they can ask all sorts of things. They can ask for takedown requests. They could theoretically ask for data, or they could actually ask for information about somebody so that they can arrest them, right? So this creates all sorts of problems. So when Elon Musk first took over Twitter, this immediately got on my radar as this is going to be something that he's going to have to deal with because, again, he's positioning himself as a free speech absolutist, which is very difficult to do when you're operating in markets that have completely different legal structures from that of the United States. And what's telling is that Musk also said in a different tweet, which kind of contradicts this sort of free speech absolutism concept, that he would comply with local laws and regulations, but there are some local laws and regulations overseas that are not necessarily pro-free speech. And I think we're starting to see this now.
You alluded to this at the beginning here. The conversation about decentralized social platforms kind of enters the chat when we talk about the social media platforms and them complying with different governments and laws. Is decentralized social a solution to this? Or is there a way that governments are still going to be able to kind of meddle with decentralized social platforms?
Yeah, again, another great question. So there's a few now kind of, I wouldn't call them competitors yet because nobody is really kind of yet chipping away at Twitter's massive network. But, you have Nostr, for example, you have Blue Sky, and both of them are positioning themselves as trying to be decentralized, right? So yes, I think there is a world in which you could create a social network, which it is harder for a government to go to one sort of central company and say, we want to take this down. And I think that's ostensibly what these competitors are trying to do. The problem is, and we're seeing this now, despite all of the criticism of Musk's Twitter and despite all of the anger at Twitter, Twitter is still quite dominant because of its of its network effect. So that's been the problem up till now, is that these decentralized social networks have not been able to kind of just get the same kind of market share and just get the same network effect as these players like Twitter. And until that happens, I don't think that they're going to be able to chip away at them. But yeah, I mean, look, we've been talking about this now for a long time. There are people trying to do this, but I do think that these government censorship requests highlight the need for alternatives to the current model.
That's exactly what I was going to say. All the users are on these centralized platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I think the industry really needs to close that gap, figure out how to get people to, first of all, understand decentralized social and then start using them. I don't think it's going to be an easy feat. Emily, always such a pleasure hearing your perspective on what's going on around the world. We should note that CoinDesk reached out to Twitter for comment, but we haven't heard back.